everybody, and welcome to a continuation of Listener Submitted Month. This week, we've got an email suggesting that we watch 1991's Night Killer.
Killer!
So here we go.
Wait, Kyle, you just gave me a great idea. This is the Night Killer.
Very
Instead
nice.
of painkiller, it's Night Killer.
I like this.
All right. Well, here we go. Here's our email. Here's the person who put us through this. It says, "Hey, it's Ray from the Facebook group and a proud Patreon subscriber. I believe
Thanks,
I told
Ray.
Scott about this one, Night Killer. It came out in 1990, and it's just ridiculous. Especially since the plot, as follows, in my own words, is an amnesiac woman who survived the attack of a serial killer who wears a rubber mask and a giant rubber monster hand with long nails, not kidding, is still being terrorized. All the while, the police try to stop his rampage. It's an Italian production filmed in the U.S. and was labeled as being part of the Texas Chainsaw series in Italy. It has zero connection to the series, and it's free on YouTube, but they edited the gore and the boobs out. Tubi is the way to go. Sorry about that. If anything,
Tubi is always the way to go.
Always.
if anything, the confusing phone conversation that happens within the first 20 minutes is worth the price of admission. It runs about 85 minutes. Not blissfully short, but just about 5 minutes shy of the sweet spot. Guys, I'm going to tell you something right now. I fucking love this movie.
Yes, me too!
I have so much fun with this movie.
This is one of those movies that is greater than the sum of its parts. Because,
Yes.
like, its parts are insane, right?
No. They're big misses actually in some
Well,
HMN
so many-
circles. Like
so
it
many
was
things
I
are
was
bad.
worried about the rapiness. Like
Yeah, anybody
so
catch-
much. It's like almost there.
But
Right.
do we all know who the writer and director is of this, or am I the only one that looked this up?
Bruno.
No, this is from
Wow.
the guy who wrote and directed Troll 2 and Monster Dog. In fact, it came
Oh.
out the same year as Troll 2. So he was just causing havoc all over the U.S. with his broken English,
Yeah.
English scripts.
No, Bruno Mattei only came in to do like the gore scenes,
Okay.
basically.
Yes.
Like, so all the fists through the bodies, I would imagine, which
I don't
know,
know how a
humans do.
Halloween costume can do so much damage.
Well, so
So
that's the
much
thing. So
damage.
apparently, like, whereas Troll 2 was Claudio's horror movie, with this one, he was really seeing this as, like, his, like, psycho type movie. Like, this was going to be a more grounded, like, thriller. And then the producers were like, we want a horror movie. And he's like, well, I don't want this to be a horror movie. So then they just went out and hired Bruno to just film gore scenes for them to insert into the movie, which is why it's, like, basically the exact same shot of a hand coming through a chest for every single kill.
it's just a few different chests.
Yeah, can we not use the word insert at all today?
Listen, literally 10 seconds into this movie, and this is a trend in Italian slasher films of the
Yeah,
80s and
dog.
90s. Like, no build up, just like, here we are, people are dancing. Like,
Yeah.
we have this weird musical performance, and I'm like, I love this movie.
Yeah,
I love
no,
everything about this.
So I need to give a little bit of backstory on why I was such a huge cheerleader for this, for Listener Submitted Month. Sometime in the last calendar year, I was talking on an episode about, I have this memory, but I don't know, from a horror movie, but I don't know what it's actually from. And Ray reached out and said, hey, it might be Night Killer. And I was like, thank you so much. It's not Night Killer, but I watched the first 10 minutes of this, and this is amazing. And so in the first minute, you see two dancers warming up by doing the Roger fucking Rabbit. And I have not seen that since a junior high dance in like 1994.
They don't do it great either.
No,
if this
but
if this is like rehearsal before like the week, if this is Hell Week because they're in the theater, like they need a lot lot more practice. They need to work on
it
their
was like
shit.
Tech Week. They're like
They're in the theater, and I'm like, geez, guys.
I love how they're so. For the uninitiated, which is probably 99% of people listening, the movie starts off with this ball buster of a choreographer / director, like yelling at her dancers who are doing like modern dance in what looks like a Dante's Inferno type
I
setup.
really thought that we were going to be here the whole time. I got like super excited. I'm like, is this like another stage fright? Like, are we going to just like live in the like theater for the rest of the movie?
So since I didn't watch much past the first two kills, whatever it is, I was like, oh, it's going to go back to the theater, and I know exactly what my double feature will be. No, it doesn't go back at all.
Never comes back.
So
it's insane that this was promoted, side note, as a
Texas
Chainsaw
movie.
Because the killer is so clearly designed to look like Freddy that it's like, how did... If you were going to promote it as anything in Italy, why not another Nightmare on Elm Street movie?
Because Leatherface was already in production? I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea I want to know more about why that happened. And I thought maybe Vinegar Syndrome put out the disc. They did not. It was Severin, which also makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, this is so much more Severin than...
Yeah.
Well, so what I think of when I think of Giallo Blu-rays, I think of Severin. Because, this is a Giallo. Like, it's not a horror movie. It's way too erotic to be a horror movie, but... Yeah. When you have a masked-faced killer who's, his total MO is kind of doing like a real-life Freddy thing, it works for the show, and it's so ridiculous that it's great. Let me go through, I think that, we're never very good at this part of the show when there's...
No, we get excited.
We do get excited, and we just want to talk about the stuff that we love. Now, I think that this movie bears some explanation with the plot, because I think that listeners need to understand. Guys, the two of you, tell me, do we give away the plot or not here? I mean, this movie is fucking 30-some years old.
This is an old movie. I think, here's the thing. If as we're walking through this movie, you are feeling more and more like you want to see this movie, then at any point, feel free to pause it, watch the movie. It's free on Tubi. And then come back and finish out the episode. But I don't think that we should hinder ourselves from the chaos that is the rest of this movie. Because listen,
not the chaos.
I'm not gonna go into any spoilers here too deeply. But when someone gets stabbed in the dick in your third act, we gotta get to that point of the movie.
It's important. It's an important plot point.
Oh man,
this seems like a movie that when I was watching it, and it's been a long time since I've watched a movie where this ran through my head in the viewing, was like, I cannot wait to watch this with a group of people.
Oh my god, I know.
Because it's like,
Dude.
It's so... The best way to watch this with a group of people, because there are so many boring lulls where you then have like conversation with people, but then there's like insane dialogue moments or like just crazy chase scenes where you're like, okay, back in. Yeah. And I think that's where it does become a little bit difficult for us to discuss it, because it's like, I would say there are maybe three or four big moments that make this movie absolutely worth watching. And then in between all of those times is just kind of a really weird, like, psychosexual exploitation grindhouse, like kind of gross at times, very misogynistic at times, like movie.
But the thing, so I
but it's
agree
so
with
dumb
all
you
of
can't
that.
take any of it seriously. Like that's
what
almost,
I was gonna say, and also so much of the grindhouse-ness is the implication. It's not the implication. Things don't. It's the threat of essay. You know. And when we get to the denouement of the very end of the fucking movie, so because like I was watching this movie and I'm confused, and I was actively watching this because I'm like, what am I missing? And when you get to the true, because I kind of figured it out, and then they spoon feed it to you at the very end. Once I figured it out, I was like, oh, this makes so much sense, and it actually kind of wraps up everything in a beautiful little bow, and it's kind of awesome. You know, like it's not, I don't want to call this movie smart because it's not, but I do feel like
but it
this
knew its
movie
ending
is clever.
And worked its way.
Well, like it was basically like it was
I think you should
act.
You should do it. You should tell the movie. You should say the movie for the uninitiated.
No, I think we need to
I.
because here's the thing. These movies always become really difficult because similar, and look, this movie's a hell of a lot more intelligent than Troll 2 is, but but like with movies like this, part of me has to wonder, is part of the problem literally that it is a person who barely speaks English writing an English script, and that like the parts that feel off or weird on the pathway are just because things are getting lost in a translation portion of it? Because I agree with you. It's not like the smartest script in the world, but all of the puzzle pieces do make logical sense where they're falling. It's just like, we can jump into this, I would say. The part that Ray calls out in her email is that there's a phone call between our survivor girl, Melanie, and her ex-husband that is like so strange, where you're only hearing like parts of it, and like you don't see who the ex-husband is just yet, but you see like a gloved hand slamming shots at the bar or whatever. And
Melanie,
Mrs. Melanie Beck.
Yeah. Then we get to like that pure lost in translation Italian moment where Melanie is just naked, staring at herself in the mirror, monologuing all of the exposition you need to know about her character. You know what I mean?
Like that's the breast exam time. I mean, it's as is
Melanie
typical.
Bank. I can't get my tit out.
I can't
camera.
wait 5 minutes, Mrs. Beck. I'm too horny.
I got Beck's for my drink of beer in honor of Miss Melanie Beck and her husband.
I don't think there's ever been a movie where we have been more sure what a character's name is than this movie. Because
no.
They say Melanie Beck
3.
plenty of times.
Poltergeist 3 is the other one.
Carolyn!
Yeah. So I could not for the life of me find a fucking drink to go with this movie until I looked in my fridge and I smacked my forehead and I'm like, Scott, you're an idiot. Because I love San Pellegrino, and I had one that's blood orange and prickly pear. So,
hell yes.
I mean, Italians aren't really known for their beer, and I know I've done wine before, but I have not done a Italian sparkling drink. It's delicious.
Cheers to Night Killer.
Yeah, you gotta have your sparkling drink so that you don't get drunk, so you don't get attacked by the...
Beck's non-alcoholic is more expensive than regular Beck's.
It's because they have to remove the alcohol. That's why.
It's a whole process.
The only note that I want to read out loud, verbatim as I wrote it, was while I was watching this movie, you know, Melanie's being called on the phone, and she starts to run to the door. And I wrote, man, for a movie called Night Killer, he certainly likes to kill during broad daylight. Because
how did that not
what's more confusing, that or Texas Chainsaw 3?
Well, at least there's a chainsaw in Texas Chainsaw 3.
That's true.
There's no night in this movie. It's all daytime.
But then, yes, we see her getting attacked, and then it kind of jumps ahead a little bit here, which is actually a pretty cool idea because her character has amnesia. And by not showing us what happened beyond that moment in the room, except for news reports, we have the exact same knowledge base as the main character that we're following, which is a very smart screenplay writing device based on how the twist of this movie ultimately plays out. To have seen more than that up until that point would have given us more information than we needed to move forward. And then it kind of is just this weird, like, she's being stalked by a guy who follows her into the bathroom. Yeah.
And it's like he's like hitting on her while he's driving, and while they're driving on the street, and then she has a gun and she makes him take his clothes off in the stall and then put them in the toilet.
He's just rocking a nice tight blue Speedo underneath everything.
Yeah.
As
like
you do
in the hotel. Looks like it came from the hotel pool.
Yeah.
And there was a moment, she tells him to throw all his clothes in the toilet and flush it, and until they cut to the next shot, I literally thought that they were implying that he somehow flushed his pants and toilet into the sewer system, because like that was the logic that the movie was throwing at me at that point.
It's not far off from what it could have been an easy option for them. There go the pants.
We do need to also give credit for another great line, because she goes, put your clothes in the toilet, and you put your clothes in there, and he goes, in the toilet, and she goes, shouldn't be new for an asshole like you're full of shit yourself. And so then he puts his clothes back on, and
no, he doesn't. He leaves He leaves naked, and a
he's
guy
got more
goes.
clothes in his car then?
Yeah, he
Yes,
had a
he
backup
does.
pair of clothes in his
Okay,
car
'cause that
apparently
makes
because that's where we get the infamous line when he's leaving, and the guy who's working the front desk is like, "Hey, buddy, what happened to your clothes?" And he just turns around and goes, "I got molested in the little boy's room," and then like continues out the door.
Hey, remember when I said that I was actively watching this movie? I totally missed that part.
It's worth a rewatch, dude. This
Hell
movie
yeah.
is a fucking wild. Carly and I moments.
That delivery is like that is one of those moments again where you're like, I feel like the Google translator gave him the wrong word for whatever sentence he was supposed to scream in that moment.
Yeah,
Like,
no, it's completely wrong. And then, I mean, this first act is completely worth the price of admission alone because, well, right before they get to that bathroom, he follows her car down a dead end, to which we then cut to the main drag of Virginia Beach. There's literally a sign that says dead end on the street that they turn down, and then we're just on the fucking drag, which is amazing. But then we go right to, I guess, Virginia Beach. I've never been.
Oh, and then he like
where-
drowns her. He basically is like, because she's gonna like take pills.
She's gonna
and
kill
kill
herself.
Yeah, she's trying to
She
kill
has
herself.
this beautiful dress that turns into a beach blanket, apparently. That she lays out all the bottles of pills that she took from the hospital that she was at after she got attacked by this night killer in broad daylight. And she wants to just kill herself. She just wants to die. And he, instead of what we assume is going to be abuse her more because he was a creep and was
but
following
he
her.
kind of does. you
That's
know?
what I mean. Everything
He
is so
he
confusing.
fucks her up in this ocean.
He's like he
Car-
dunks her until she pukes up the pills.
Yeah, which was like, hey man, you got other options. The
Yeah.
seawater, it's not a holistic medicine thing that like seawater is gonna help you puke. It did with the way that you made her swallow that much.
She swallowed
seawater,
a small great, a
was-
less great
yeah.
lake.
but, yeah, an okay lake.
Yeah. A mediocre lake.
Better than good lake.
But then
but
he takes her to this hotel and he keeps her there and is like mentally, he's like Stockholm Syndroming
That's
her.
what I was gonna say. He Stockholm
Yes.
syndromes her, and then there's a part. I can't remember the context of this. I just have the question written down of where did the fried chicken come from? Because he's like talking to her.
Oh,
at
he
one
brings
point.
it to her, yeah.
Okay, he does bring it to her because at
Yeah.
one point they're talking, and I just see him pull a piece of fried chicken out of nowhere to offer her, and I'm like, where did this come from? But yes, he essentially is brainwashing her to be subservient to him in a way. Like, this is like my least favorite plot point of this movie.
little
It is a
icky.
real slog. I feel like if I was watching this in a group, I would be like talking a lot to try and bring attention away from what I am showing people, you know?
Well, it's almost like they're trying to, like, when I was watching it, I'm like, man, they really want us to think that this is the guy who's also wearing the mask. Like,
Right.
Like, and it's
and
like,
in the middle of it, he's like, I gotta go. And then we see this woman who's a scientist. You know she's a scientist because she's hot, but she has glasses. And
Yep.
then
Yeah.
she gets killed in an aquarium?
Yeah,
or something like
it was
that.
yeah.
And then, or she gets like smothered, and then she gets taken to some second location and has a mask and glove put on her, and then like wax put over her boobs.
it's a real tourist trap moment. I
Yes,
will lie.
it really
two different women that happens to, but they are back to back.
Okay.
And this reporter just
okay.
always catching hot scoops to explain to us, the audience, what's happening, I guess, and to all of Virginia Beach. But no, they cut them between this man who is keeping Mrs. Melanie Beck hostage in his hotel room, feeding her chicken. And my favorite Letterboxd review was like, this is the second best example of psychosexual use of fried chicken besides Killer Joe, R.I.P. William Friedkin. And it's true because I've never used fried chicken. I've never seen fried chicken used in this way, except for here and Killer Joe. So, but then it's a great tourist trap moment of being dipped in
Her
wax.
heart explodes
even though
from fright, for sure.
For sure. Even though he bought that mask at CVS. Clear as day.
Bro, I wish
I've
they
seen
sold that
mask
mask
before.
at CVS. That would be incredible.
Dude, yeah, who's going to be Night Killer? Is Trick or Treat Studios going to put out a Night Killer mask anytime soon? Should talk to Severin about it.
Yeah, I was about to say that. But I know you got Severin on the line, so just.
I do.
Did you guys catch that one line that the woman in the blue dress says? She's grabbing the Night Killer's dick, and she goes, Why, grandmother, what a big schlong you have. There are so many lines in this movie that I wish there was a good theme that I could do a cover of, because it would literally just be a clip show, like an audio clip show with me just doing a couple riffs in between, because there's some gold here.
There's a lot happening here, but there's no. Actually, I think did I have a note about the music? No, because there wasn't much. There wasn't much, and what there was didn't make a ton of sense. Like, it was kind of, there was like synthy stuff happening in a moment that like did not need it. It was very mismatched. And again, like, the fact that they even thought that this was Texas Chainsaw, like even proclaimed that it was Texas Chainsaw 3 in Italy when it was Virginia Beach winter, I still can't get over it. It was like, it's fucking dead streets. Like, there's nobody out there.
How cold was it, do you think, when she was getting dunked in the fucking the ocean?
Apparently, it was so fucking cold. Apparently, those two actors did not like each other very much.
I would never guess that. They had so much on-screen chemistry.
and that's very apparent. Their lack thereof on-screen chemistry was pretty atrocious.
Well, actually, the chemistry worked well. Their lack of chemistry worked well when he's like trying to abuse her in the hotel room.
That is true, because it did play into, like, he's just a really good actor of what he needs to be for the twist to work. But like, I was like, this is uncomfortable, and we are not having lots of fun here on this set.
No. But so we get to the point.
It's my favorite Christmas movie.
Well, okay, so this could have been a Christmas movie. I think that you might change that decision about your favorite Christmas movie when you watch what I'm picking for December.
Okay.
But at the same time, I think we need to get to the very end of this movie.
Well, so I was just thinking we need to introduce a thing that, like we said, Melanie Beck and her former police officer husband are divorcing. And are going through a messy breakup, and they have a daughter. And now that the daughter, the father, yeah, I guess so, sure, whatever. All I remember was Melanie Beck.
How could you forget Miss Melanie
The
Beck?
father's kind of MIA. Now Melanie has amnesia, so they have gifted the daughter to the next door neighbors for the time being, who the husband has a scar on his face from when he was the one that showed up and stopped Melanie from being murdered and fought off the masked assailant. Yeah, he fought off the night killer. And that brings us to the reveal that, I mean, I think we all kind of...
when did we know?
No, I knew it when... I didn't know.
I knew almost immediately. When the second that he showed up with that scar, and he's like, I got this nasty scar on my face. I'm like, that motherfucker scarred himself. I thought he cut himself to take suspicion off of him. But, like, I was like, that's the one who did it. And but throughout the movie, every single character is shot in a way at least once to make it seem like they're the killer, even when it's physically impossible. Like, I think my favorite was that their daughter yells at the woman who's kind of like her guardian at this point. She's like, "You're not my mother," and then the woman just like stares into the camera for about 10 seconds, and I'm like, what is this shot if not...
Everyone's a suspect.
Yeah, if not to make the audience go, ooh, maybe she's the one that's been putting the mask on.
Yeah, definitely the night killer is a woman, guys.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It was like, it was so dumb how they would just frame every single character as a potential suspect, even when we're like, look, we narrowed it down. Yeah, we narrowed it down to it's
we watched
definitely
the
a
Queen kills
man.
7 times or whatever.
That's true.
Red Queen kills 7 times.
Yeah, we did. I got to figure out what Giallo. It's been a while. I mean, this kind of covers it for a little bit, but I'll find another.
I mean, there are the big ones that you have not touched. So
Scarface, we find out Scarface is the killer. It's basically what we're getting
So
to.
Sherman is the killer. Next door neighbor is the killer. It's because he really wanted to bang Mrs. Beck, and she was a tease, I guess, which is that sounds very incel of him.
Classic.
But then he gets shot and killed by the guy that was holding her cons.
He gets stabbed in the dick.
He gets stabbed in the dick. Yeah, I don't know. I was trying to keep that as a surprise for the watcher, but he gets stabbed in the fucking dick, and then he gets shot a bunch of times in the chest by the guy that had her hostage turns out is her estranged husband, which is when when I figured that out, I was like, okay, this movie is super clever for what it is, because I love that he was basically trying to reverse brainwash her and remind her of her missing memories. And then we get a second fake out where little shit Annie opens her Christmas presents too early, and there's a night killer mask there.
I want to pause before that because I need to stress that the actress that they've cast to play this daughter, I don't know how old the daughter is supposed to be.
She's got my wife's haircut from
I was going to say she at a minimum looks about 12 or 13 years old. Yeah.
But she talks like she's 6.
She's talks like she's 6 or 7.
I was going to say, there's definitely a scene where they are laying in bed together, which already 12, 13, weird, and they are having the time of their fucking lives doing the here's the church, here's the steeple, open the door, there's the people.
My 2.5-year-old son is already over that. He's over that shit.
Listen, the internet has sped up development,
loves it. Yeah,
so,
Yeah.
And I wrote, I don't hate this ending. I love this ending that she sneaks down.
And she goes,
opens
Mrs.
the
Beck.
gift.
She's like, so this is like the Halloween 4 of it all. Somehow.
But here's the thing. I do really like this ending. And the reason why I like this ending is keep in mind that while all of this is happening, she has been living with Sherman this entire time.
Okay.
So
I hadn't pieced that together.
We have because they do so little to show what's going on with Anne beyond establishing her in like 2 scenes up until the ending of the movie. We have no clue. Sherman could have fully fucking brainwashed her as a plan B if something was to happen to her.
I'd fucking buy that for $1. Night Killer 2. Let's do it. 2025. Let's go.
Hey, Kyle, remember a while ago remember a while ago we talked about like if Tubi came to you and was like, you can revamp or redo anything? I think we found your call, man. It's like, hey, you guys already got Night Killer. How do you feel?
What do you think? What do you think? Listen,
how about
I know you've all seen Night Killer. I don't need to explain
Killer? How about
and it's
mid-afternoon killer? How about
right at like
broad
7
daylight
a.m. killer? Yeah. Like brunch killer.
Brunch killer. Oh, I love it.
Oh fuck.
All right, so
I like that. I like that vibe. I did not pick up on that. And
good job, Matt. Matt is so much smarter than the two of us today.
That gives me another half-a-star Letterboxd review just for that.
Can you go back in and update your Letterboxd reviews?
I can.
Oh, he can.
And I've done it a few times, especially depending on the Doritos.
Can you lower the Freddy vs. Jason review that you have on there?
And I did. I think I even lowered my overall, because I have the diary entry and then I have my overall. I think I lowered it the last time we watched.
So here's the thing here's the big question with Kyle, and I've learned this on Letterboxd. For the most part, Kyle and I agree on movies. But how we decide to rate them is very different, because I think I give stars based on an overall enjoyment of a movie, whereas Kyle's still comes from he's a filmmaker that wants to be taken seriously, because he gave this shit 1.5 stars, which is just atrocious.
I did, and it's not. It's certainly worth 2.5.
I gave it 3.
2.5 stars. 3 stars.
My viewing is 2.5.
I mean, I don't have a Letterboxd because I don't want to fall down that rabbit hole, because I know that I would have a fucking blast. But
I think I was just super not stoked on the essay stuff
in the middle. Yeah, the second act is really the center of this movie is really rough.
Yeah. No. Listen, as someone who just recently rewatched Sleepaway Camp for another podcast, check out the Midnight Terrors podcast. That is a movie where the fun never stops from front to back, and it still dabbles into some icky stuff, but the ratio of we are having a good time with everything is much higher than this, where this is peaks and valleys. It hits these highs, and then it hits a couple lows.
I don't know. I think you're right, Matt. I think I do really give it a filmmaker's review as opposed to an enjoyment review.
Yeah,
most of the time.
I am almost purely enjoyment review. But speaking
of
enjoyment,
as you should be, because fuck all those pretentious fucks, me included.
At Maximum Mediocrity, people say things like,
I don't dress like this on the regular basis. This isn't my, pooping uniform. This is not what I wear.
And they also say things like,
The nurses are usually either angels of mercy or whores.
Every episode is a new experience where you get to know people that aren't famous but should be.
Why did my
facing Floyd Mayweather in the woods.
My co-host Morgan and I track down the people you didn't know you needed to hear from.
It's like hot sex in a mug.
We are the Maximum Mediocrity Podcast, and we are on all major podcasting platforms. We'll be waiting for you.
Well, last week I went first on the double feature, so I'm going to step back and do either one of you have a double feature that you want to jump in and suggest for this listener submitted pick?
I'm going to let Kyle go first because I know I swooped in and stole some stuff from him last month. So why don't you go first because I don't want to disappoint you.
Oh, you could never. But thank you. I'm going to choose Blood Delirium, which is something that I had watched.
Never heard of it.
And listen, it is sleazier and probably even more uncomfortable than I felt Night Killer to be. It is like there's necrophilia, there's an artist who goes crazy, and I think there's like an incestual thing, go figure. But it really matches the tone of this. Surprisingly, I think it's another Italian one. But Vinegar Syndrome had put it out, and all I could think about was like how just uncomfy, but how I couldn't turn away. Like, and this emulated that. So Blood Delirium was my double feature. It's not a fun evening, but it could be.
But it's an evening.
It's more evening than Night Killer, I'll tell you that.
There's that. And for some more Italian goodness in broad daylight with with some dick trauma, I'm gonna double feature it with Pieces, which is why I'm really shocked that you didn't go with.
Bro, it's on my. You can't see it. It's on my list. It's on my list. Pieces. There it is.
Yeah. There you go.
I went Blood Delirium though.
I went with a movie that I referenced like 4 different times already in this episode, but it came out the same year, same director, same writer, Troll 2.
Troll 2. Yeah.
Troll 2 I think is more successful at maintaining the level of crazy from front to back where it doesn't have the lulls that this has at some points. Now normally at this point in the show we would talk about some types of movies or TV shows that we've been watching, but as our friends in the Actors and Writers Guilds are still on strike, we are going to talk about anything but those things. So music, books, music, books, podcasts, etc. I think that there can be obvious leniencies if like you're promoting an independent film or something that's not tied up in the studio system, because that's truly what we're striking against. But Kyle, since you kicked us off with the double feature, let's start with you on that as well.
I don't know if I've actually ever talked about this on the show. I consider Sonic Youth to be my favorite band.
Really? I just pegged you as a Primus man, but continue.
No, I mean,
Sonic Youth is his number one.
I do love.
I
Primus.
knew that.
Sonic Youth is my number one, and they just released a recording of their final show. And it's on Spotify, but it's also, it's on Vine. They did a whole shebang, but their final show, live in Brooklyn, 2011. And I listened to it, and I had only seen I was only fortunate enough to see Sonic Youth one time. And it was on the Rather Rip tour. I'm going to say a bunch of shit that maybe might mean something to somebody, but until then, this is that. But I saw them once, and they were incredible. They're equally experimental as well as like jam bandy, as well as like just like regular indie rock as well. Like they incorporate a lot of things that I've liked about music, and then to see and then hear them live is amazing. This recording is really excellent. It takes 3 decades of their material and applies it to a live performance. It actually has a lot more cuts from their like mid 80s to late 80s, early 90s stuff than it does anything else that they've done. And then I could not help but listen to it while also thinking about how their breakup happened. If you've read Kim Gordon's memoir, Girl in a Band, she goes into depth about how her and Thurston Moore had broken up and had separated from each other, and it was not a very amicable breakup. There was some infidelity. And just like to think about this band that has done all this together and had this relationship, and to think about it in the context of their relationship while listening to this band perform like their last show is kind of fascinating. I don't know. The recording itself and the songs themselves are chaos, as they should be. But I've just sort of been soaking that up and reflecting on that a little bit, because I've always come back to Sonic Youth in a lot of ways.
I think I need you to tell me where to start with Sonic Youth, because they're a band that I've always wanted to like, and I'm thinking, like, I'm looking and seeing, like, what do I own by them, and the only album I have by them is Sonic Nurse that I just bought kind of randomly, and it didn't really wow me. I liked the song Schizophrenia, and I liked the song Teenage Riot. Yeah. But that's about as far as my knowledge base goes. So maybe not here live on the air, but at some point, definitely let me know what album should I start with to actually get sucked
exactly what album Matt Kelly should start with. Like, that's the exciting thing about Sonic Youth, is that, like, depending on, like, sort of your other tastes and interests and whatever, I can find that and tell you that, and then you sort of build out from there. And you still might not dig it. Like, you still might not be like, whatever. But, like, I have an entry point for an insert point for you. I just want to say insert again.
Scott, how about you? What is something that you want to talk about or promote?
All right, so I don't want to be too big of a downer, but because I know, Kyle, sorry. Because this is probably dropping right around the time when this new album is coming out, I need to talk about Thy Art Is Murder. Now, Thy Art Is Murder is an Australian deathcore band that I have really liked for a very long time. The last two albums were great. I was super stoked about the new album coming out. The singles sounded fantastic. And then CJ McMahon, the singer, came out on Twitter and said that people that support trans youth should be burnt to death. And then when he got backlash, he deleted his social media profiles and said that he's only going he didn't really apologize. He just said that he's gonna be focusing on just promoting the band's material through their social media. Now, I can't support them anymore. Sucks, because I really like that band. On the coattails of that, more guys came out in the metal community who were anti-trans and transphobic, and the one of them is D. fucking Snyder. And the other one, isn't that a fucking surprise?
I saw that.
Alice fucking Cooper. Now, I understand that Alice Cooper's born again Christian, so that may have something to do with his whatever. And then Alex Terrible from Slaughter Will Prevail. They're a Russian death metal band. Not super surprised by him. He was like super pro Ukraine, but I get where a Russian dude who is totally jacked is a fucking misogynist. So, but the inverse. So don't fucking support those bands. Don't support those people. Don't support metal bands that aren't vigorously pro LGBTQIA rights and, you know, women's rights and abortion rights. And like, if you're not listening to progressive people make metal, you've completely fucking missed the point of what metal is. A couple suggestions that I have for you if you want to listen to bands that are very progressive from their front people. Cattle Decapitation is a huge one. That's probably the one that everybody thinks of the most. Lead singer of OTEP is a huge feminist. She's awesome. I don't really love OTEP, but those things are important. I had a whole list in my mind, and I'm kind of blanking on them. I believe that Gall from Gorgoroth is, he's openly homosexual, has been for a very long time, and is in the black metal scene, which is incredibly bigoted and misogynistic. So he also went to jail for a year in 2016, I want to say, for assaulting a man and saying he was going to drink his blood. So he is definitely a...
Sounds hot.
He's a very... mixed bag when it comes to that, but there are a lot of people out there that are vigorously, loudly progressive in their political views. Metal is supposed to be about progressive views. It should not be about regressive views, like being anti-trans, like saying that trans people and the people that support them should be fucking burned to death. And if you are not part of that, you're not welcome. Sorry, I don't want to be a gatekeeper
You're not
for metal. But you're not. You're
Legit.
a fucking poser.
No, you're not. Like I mean, I wholeheartedly agree, and it's so hard. I would imagine. I mean, I'm not in those communities, but I'm in other communities that you run into that shit all the time, right? And it tears at you somewhat because you're like, oh, I was / am / will no longer be a part of this thing or support this thing. But it's not ever easy, but it also is very easy to just be like, okay, I'm done and move on.
And
so
being,
good on you.
When I was in the metal scene very actively, like there's so much misogyny back then, and coming back into it in 2023, it's still there. And the white supremacy has definitely become more obvious. And I'm not going to close off that part of my life because I hate those belief systems. I'm going to be more vocally against them, and hopefully safe as I do so. But you make choices in life, and other people make choices in life as well. And if they want to be confrontational about it, then you have to just accept that that's part of fighting the oppression of fucking fascism.
Yes, amen.
All right, well, I'm going to kind of somewhat bounce off of that, but not totally. As I said, I'm always going to use this opportunity to at least promote one Geekscape podcast, so this seems like a good a time as any to promote the Napping Through Happy Hour podcast, hosted by Katie and Marie.
Great title.
I know. They used to be the Black or White podcast, and then they realized that is a name that a lot of people have used, and it was almost borderline impossible to find their show. But their show, their tagline is real topics, real life. Real topics, real drama, real life, real time. And it's basically two people who I used to work with when I was doing the online game show thing for a couple months. They both got laid off on the same day, started a podcast as a way to stay in touch with each other, and since then has really turned into just an interesting conversation of two people who have very different lives, but still love each other. Not that they definitely agree on things politically and geeky, but Katie was a girl who was going to school to be a pastor before she lost her faith, and Marie is a drag queen lesbian who's the daughter of a pastor. And
wow.
They discuss life issues.
I've listened to the show, and I've seen a lot of the clips that they post on social, and I think that they're hilarious. I did not know the backstory about either of them just then. I don't know how I missed that.
It's really, I mean, the first couple episodes, there are some episodes that are hard. In the time that they've done this podcast, Marie's father passed away. Mm-hmm. There are multiple difficult episodes where they still record it every single week, and it is like a real-time capsule of her going through the phases of grief on the show. But it's a really powerful, really unique show that I'm glad to say is part of the Geekscape network. And I'm going to do something a little bit different with my other thing. You were talking about how the metal scene can be either super progressive or be filled with so many regressive people, and I think something that goes hand in hand with that is wrestling. And I just want to recommend people. We lost Bray Wyatt this week at the time that we're recording anyway, and it was probably the first time in a really long time that a wrestling death really just rattled me to my core. Bray Wyatt was one of us. Like, he was a fucking horror nerd. He dressed in costumes that were specifically designed for him by Tom Savini. He was in conversations to write a horror movie with the Soska sisters. Like, He was a deep-cut horror movie nerd. Unfortunately got COVID and died of heart attack complications from COVID. Go check out his matches, a few of his matches. They are some of the most visually insane, unique, bizarre things. I don't think you'll ever see something else like this in the history of wrestling. He somehow was like, well, what if Leatherface and Robert De Niro's character from Cape Fear was a wrestler?
Yep.
With a little dash of deliverance, and it was just him as like a cult leader that would brainwash people to join his cult in wrestling and would do these cinematic matches. He did a really interesting, like, demented Mr. Rogers thing for a couple years where he had a kid show with evil puppets, and like he was clearly had a split personality, one that wanted to do good and an evil demon inside of him that forced him to do, like, he really understood what makes wrestling enjoyable and knew how to play it up. And a lot of what made it work was because he clearly loved the horror source material that he was pulling from. It is probably the biggest loss that in my time that I've seen hit the wrestling industry. Like,
yeah, I would imagine for people who were watching when Owen Hart died,
it would be similar. Yeah,
like I mean Eddie Guerrero was huge,
but this is
too,
like the creativity that oozed out of this guy was
right.
Like,
that's the thing, especially for the crossover that this show and our interests have with wrestling too.
Yeah,
losing Bray Wyatt was.
You and I were texting about it that night, and I literally said, like, there's a handful of celebrities that you feel like if I had a chance to meet them, be it like to interview them for a project or whatever, that we would become friends. And like Bray Wyatt was like the top of that list. I'm like,
no doubt.
The reference pools that you would find him making in his promos, I was just like, this guy gets it. This guy's like die-hard horror movie buff. So it's a real bummer.
It wasn't only dropping references, but it was like actually like the building of the matches, especially when during COVID they had all these sort of like more unique sort of interactive cinematic matches. Like he had this whole meta match with John Cena in which he basically went through timelines of like this almost multiverse-esque match with John Cena that was like, I mean, Cena is like the person that you're supposed to wrestle at WrestleMania. Like if you get a Cena match, that means something, right? And like,
and he turned into like a David Lynch film. It's like a 15-minute mindfuck David Lynch film that makes no sense. That's one of the most frustrating ones because I followed that whole everything. It's the most brilliant thing I've ever seen, and it is so hard to try to explain why it's brilliant to somebody who's never watched anything leading up to it. They can appreciate the weirdness of it, but they don't understand like the layers of how smart it truly was.
I didn't even think wrestling fans necessarily did it a lot of times. Like when this last iteration of Bray Wyatt with the Firefly Funhouse and the Fiend and all those things were a little complicated, but there was so much energy and enthusiasm behind it. He never phoned it in. He never did any of those things, and he was also just a great performer in ring and outside the ring. So it was a fucking. A bummer is an understatement.
I literally thought it was fake news. I thought that I literally thought that it was like, when they incorrectly announce someone's death and like an hour or two later, their representative is like, nope, sorry. That's because literally everything we heard is like, hey, he's set to come back in September. Like he's been medically cleared to wrestle again.
Yep.
But real bummer.
Shame.
Bringing us down on a down note, I guess. But hey,
go watch Night Killer.
Yeah, go watch Night Killer and feel good.
It's fun.
And we'll be back next week with another one of your listeners submitted picks. I mean, look, to each his own, but I think one of these viewings was really, really fun. Mm-hmm. And we'll see you guys next week.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.